Hello lovelies, welcome to Nut Free Formula. My name's Freedom, thank you for joining me. Today's episode is about Narcissists That Kill, the Scott Peterson case. For those of you who don't know, I'll just give you a quick outline of the case that I'm talking about. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go through it a bit and pinpoint the red flags and the signs and signals that Scott Peterson was actually a narcissist. So, Scott and Laci Peterson were a married couple in Modesto. They were expecting a baby. Lacey was 8 months pregnant, and she disappeared. And subsequently, a few months later, her body and that of her unborn child washed up in the San Quentin Bay area. And Scott was later on arrested and charged with murder, and he was sentenced to death via lethal injection. However, there was an overturning of the death sentence due to a technicality. So he's still in jail. However, his case is coming up to be reheard on the 27th of April. Now, this episode was inspired by watching Bailey Sarian cover this case. She did a great job. And also the fact that, as I said, that he is potentially going back into court, to have this overturned on a technicality. So let's get into it. Laci Denise Peterson was born on the 4th of May 1975, and Scott Peterson was born on the 24th of October in 72. So they were college sweethearts. So they actually went to school together and they moved in together 2 years later. As I said, Lacey was last seen on Christmas Eve at 9 a.m. She had gone for a walk, apparently, while Scott was out golfing. Oh, no, I'm not actually golfing, I'm out fishing. So he already changed his story very early on in the piece, which, that's a bit strange, really, don't you think? So anyhow, there's a few things already that are wrong here. I mean, we know that it's Christmas Eve. Anyone who knows, family, Christmas Eve, that's busy time. That's not time people take off and go fishing, right? So anyhow, Scott's covering up he's making up lies already. So the bodies unfortunately washed up, like I said, on the April 2003. So she was last seen in Christmas, and 2003, in April, the bodies turned up. Scott was convicted on 2004, and then there was this technicality. So on October the 14th, the San Mateo County Supreme Court, they sat to decide whether or not Scott Peterson would receive a new trial, and what they determined was, and I'm going to get this right, the court determined that the trial judge made a series of clear and significant errors that, under the long-standing United States Supreme Court precedent, undermines Peterson's right to an impartial jury at the penalty phase. As I said, a technicality, not because he's innocent, because of a technicality. So Lacey was 26 years old when she disappeared, and 8 months pregnant. And at first, when she disappeared, like I said, Scott had this story that he made up. But there was something that was going on, and this is just like the Shanann Chris Watts case. There was a mistress that Scott was hiding. Now, her name was Amber Frey. And she had been introduced to Scott by a mutual friend who was a work colleague of Scott's. And Scott had been doing what narcissists do. He had been saying things like, he was lonely and that his marriage was breaking down, he might have even said that he was separated. I mean, Amber Frey certainly didn't know that he was married. When she first met Scott, she had no clue that he was married. He lied. Okay, so, and this is the other similarity between this case and the Watts case, is Amber and Scott had only known each other a very short time when he decided to murder his wife, an unborn child, to just to clear the path, to just get rid of it, keep it all nice and tidy, no loose ends, no child support, no ex-wife and kid. Alright, so in November 2002, they spoke initially on the phone. I can't even imagine how awkward that conversation would have been. Oh, hi, I hear you're single. Oh, hi, I hear you're lonely. Weird. Anyhow, they met on November 20th. On December the 2nd, Scott met Amber's daughter. She had an infant daughter, and they spent the night together. Scott told her he wasn't married and he had no kids. So on December the 9th, Scott fessed up to her that he had been married, but that he lost his wife. He lost his wife. Interestingly enough, that was also the day that Scott bought the boat. The boat in itself, that whole story is another thing altogether. Scott wasn't really a fisherman. When he spoke to police, about why he was out fishing, he couldn't remember what he was catching or what bait he was using. He couldn't remember any of that stuff, the important stuff. All right, so on the 11th of December, they attended a birthday party together. And then on December 14th was the last time Amber Frey saw Scott. So literally a handful of times. So what ended up happening was Amber heard about the case, right? Because it's all over the news. She hears about the case and she contacted the Modesto Police Department on December 30 and told them that she was having an affair with Scott. Now, Scott hadn't. Scott had been pretending to be, this sad and grieving husband. There was he didn't come clean about the affair, nothing. It was all just one lie after another. All right, so she ends up working for the police. They wire her up and they record. Sorry, they don't wire her up. They wire up her phone. They record the conversations between her and Scott. One of the things that I found just unbelievably horrific was there was a family a vigil that the family put together one night where everyone was there. Now, not only did Scott not speak or attend, but he rang and spoke to Amber and told Amber that he was in Paris, that he was in Europe, and that he would be coming back later on in the new year. He even made up names of his friends. I wrote them down. It was like Luigi and Mario, that kind of dumb diddly stuff. I think one of them was actually Francesco, maybe. Like I said, I've got my notes and I will find it, I'm sure. But yeah, he even made up these friends that he spoke to while he was in Europe. All right, let's get back to the notes. So, Amber's working with the police. So some of the narcissistic red flags that have come up, obviously, are things like this. So when Scott met Lacey's mum, he arrived with roses for Lacey and roses for Lacey's mum. So he's love bombing the mum as well. So on April 14th, 4 months after Lacey disappeared, Lacey and Connor, that's the baby, that's the baby's name, they were going to name the baby, Lacey and Connor's bodies washed up, partly decomposed and dismembered. So a couple who were walking their dog, this next bit's really graphic, and forward through it if you find this too distressing. A couple that were walking their dog found what is called a prenatal fetus. So it's a fetus that hasn't actually been born, so prenatal, and it had 1.5 loops of nylon cord wrapped around its neck. And then the next day, which was April 14th, Lacey's decapitated torso with partially or completely missing 3 limbs. So basically it was her upper body that was found, and her lower torso. It was wrapped in tape and nylon cord, and her lower abdomen had somehow ruptured and the fetus had been expelled from her body. She had 2 cracked ribs and was found wearing a maternity bra. So the police, once they had this information, they had been tracking Scott. Behind the scenes, the police had been tracking Scott because they were showing, essentially, he was showing too many red flags. Like I said, there was a change in his stories. There was a whole lot of things that, any good detective would have picked up on. Obviously, the affair was an issue. The fact that he was having his responses and the way he was reacting wasn't right. So in the footage, once again, just like Chris Watts, in the footage taken by the CCTV camera at the police department during the first interview, Scott was very nonchalant about things. He was kind of using one-word answers. He was kind of resting back in his chair. He was just very, it was just the wrong response. And like I said, when you're a detective, you're trained, you see enough of this stuff, and you get to be really good at picking up on people's energy, picking up on the vibes. So the police, the detectives involved, had Scott squarely in their crosshairs. And plus they'd been listening into the phone calls between him and the mistress, and they'd heard him blatantly lying, saying that he was, in Paris. So all of that stuff, it's not adding up. But the thing is, they need the evidence. So they've been tracking his car, but Scott has clued on to that, right? Somehow he's clued on to the fact that they are tracking him. So he's swapped out cars with his brother. And when they do catch up with him, they find him it was a random thing. Someone called it in. He was found at a golf course park. So in the parking lot, sorry. He dyed his facial hair blonde, including his hair and his facial hair. And he'd grown a goatee. He was driving his brother's car and was found in possession of multiple mobile phones, $15,000 in cash, 200 sleeping pills, his brother's ID, so his brother's driver's license, a dagger and a gun, camping gear, and an assortment of clothes, including dress clothes. He said that he was playing golf, but Broccaccini, who's the detective, the quote he said was, "He was better than any drug dealer. He was counter surveillance savvy." So Scott Peterson knew that they were watching him, but he wasn't that good, was he? He would have prided himself on outsmarting the police, but he didn't really, did he? All right, so what does he need with all of this stuff? What is he going on the run? Looks like he's going on the run. Looks like he could also potentially be committing more crimes. All right, so there was a special, Truth and Lies ABC special called The Murder of Laci Peterson. And in that, Dennis, who is Scott's dad, says it's lie after lie with Scott. Does he ever stop? So this is coming from his own family, like his own flesh and blood. All right, so these are the suspicious signs. So at the first interview with police, Scott tells them that Lacey was planning a walking day Lacey was planning on walking their dog Mackenzie, and that he had gone out fishing. Then he pulled out the proof, right? Now, this is something that narcissists do. Fake proof. Oh, look, I was here, right? So they'll deliberately, literally go somewhere, get some evidence, so like a parking ticket, like in this case, a parking receipt, right? So they can pinpoint themselves at that, it's that counter surveillance thing. They're getting fake proof. So he pulled out this proof. So the detectives at Modesto PD was Al Broccaccini, and Scott said to them he didn't know what he was fishing for or what bait he was even using. I mean, who goes out fishing on Christmas Eve when your pregnant wife, 8 months pregnant, like the story, it's just not making sense. One of the things that Broccaccini said that he noticed was that when Broccaccini was looking at their cars, so Scott and Lacey's cars, Broccaccini accidentally opened Scott's truck door onto Lacey's car. Scott ran over with a glove to wedge them between the two cars and made a big deal about, I'll move my truck or I'll hold the glove so you don't scratch the car. Like his pregnant wife is missing and he's worried about a scratch on his car. Okay, so that's not normal. That's not normal behaviour there. So when Scott initially, so it wasn't Scott that called the police initially. It was Lacey's stepdad, Ron. So when Scott, I'll back up a bit. So when Scott came home from his fake fishing trip, when in actuality he was dumping Lacey's body, what he did was he came home, he washed his clothes, right? He put a load of washing on, so he washed the clothes that he was wearing, he had something to eat, he got dressed, and apparently, even though his wife's not home and he's, all this worried about her, he never calls her phone. He doesn't bother calling her phone again, which I find that's a tell within itself, surely. So he'd done this fake evidence. He'd left a message on her phone saying something along on the lines of, I'm worried about you, call me, or whatever, something, just something to, once again, pinpoint that, yes, he was calling her, but he never called the phone again. Now, that is a red flag right there, right? Obviously, he knows she's dead. Obviously, he knows because he's done it, Anyhow, so he doesn't call anyone and ask, is Lacey there? All he does is calls the parents, so Lacey's mum and stepdad, and says Lacey's missing, instead of saying, is she there? Right? So Ron, who's the stepdad, he calls it in. Now, to Ron and mum, Scott had said he'd gone golfing because it's on the 911 call. It's on the recorded call. It actually said, Ron saying that her husband, Scott, was out golfing. All right, so when the police find Scott, they also go to his warehouse. Now, Scott's a fertilizer salesman and he's got a big warehouse. So in the warehouse, they find a boat plus homemade anchors and signs that other anchors have been made. You've got to wonder, what would someone be wanting homemade anchors 2024. I mean, he's not, he's not a crazy fisherman. He literally just bought this boat, but he's already making homemade anchors. So he didn't buy the anchors, he bought the cement and the materials to... So I've got dogs barking and people walking through, and it's raining, it's all going on here. So he didn't buy these anchors. He bought the cement and the whatever to actually create anchors. What would you want anchors for? I mean, you know what he wanted the anchors for. That is horrific. The thought of that is just horrific. All right, anyhow, so the 12 hours after Lacey's disappearance, when Scott's at the first interview with the police, being formally interviewed, mind you, right, the police recall him being too calm, callous and laid back. Now, 24 hours later, on Christmas Day, Scott at a family, so the police were there with the family. Scott made a point of asking Detective Brocconcini if there would be grief counsellors available for the family, for Lacey's family. And he said, we're going to need it. I mean, red flag, we're going to need it. 24 hours. His wife's been missing for 24 hours. I mean, at this stage, like I said, he's still playing the grieving husband, but those are the signs and those are the little slip-ups that led to Scott Peterson ending up in jail for life. All right, so let me just go through my notes. So by January 24th, which is only, a month after Lacey disappeared, the police have Scott under surveillance 24/7, and they're monitoring the calls to Amber. So already they've found out about the mistress and they've got him under 24-hour surveillance, and they're tracking his vehicle and movements. So all throughout January, the police divers are searching the whole San Franscisco Bay area, and on January the 13th, it's when the media first broke the story about Amber Frey. So the National Enquirer ran an expose about Scott and his mistress. By January 24th, so it wasn't until that point that Lacey's family turned against Scott. So up to that point, they had believed that Scott was innocent, that Scott would never do anything to hurt Lacey. However, once they realised that he'd been having an affair, lying the whole time, they realised that liars lie. And if he was lying about that, what else was he lying about? On January the 28th, Scott did an interview with Diane Sawyer on Good Morning America, and that interview, I'm going to link it in the comments, that was interesting. What I noticed is this: he was very smug, and he had that awful smirk, that narcissistic smirk that all narcissists get, when they know they're getting away with something, or when they're lying but they think the person they're talking to is believing the lies. So it's the duper's delight grin. They're really enjoying conning or duping their audience. All right, so what I noticed from that was that he kept parroting his answers. So Diane would ask him different things, so different questions. He would use the same phrases, and that's something that people do when they're lying, because they're remembering things. They're remembering what they're going to say. They're not just thinking about it. It's not just happening organically or naturally. They happen to remember the lines. So Scott was giving himself away. What I also noticed was he described their marriage, for example, as glorious, right? And he was, tears and glorious marriage. At this stage, the bodies haven't been found. She's just still missing. So there he is talking about his glorious marriage with Lacey. but in actuality, he's been having an affair for at least a month behind her back. So for me, the red flags there is that narcissists, you know, they have these versions of self. So in his mind, there's the self that he tells the world about, that he pretends to be, you know, this happily married man. Excuse me one sec. Sorry, lovelies, I've just got a barking dog in the yard and it's my neighbours and it's driving me crazy. I don't know if you can hear it or not. Hopefully you can't. All right, so the versions of self. So he's got this version of self, you know, the happily married man. That's the version that he tells everyone about, unless he's trying to crack onto them or make them new supply, like he did with Amber. You know, then he tells a different story. Oh, I'm not married and I've got no children. What I also found really interesting was in the ABC documentary, they showed a woman called Lauren Barnett, who was the woman that was before Lacey. Now, she was works in a restaurant. She said that Scott Peterson gave her roses, did the wine and roses routine. So it's the same MO. He did the exact same thing with Amber Fry as well. You know, and the thing with narcissists, we know that they have an MO. We know that they will keep using it if it works, and they only alter things up if it doesn't work. Now, obviously that did work, because Lauren Barnett, she says to this day, I still love him for the person he is, the person I know. Ooh, all right, see, narcissists, you know, they wear a mask, and it's a really, really, you know, it's effective, that mask. People believe it. They, you know, they take it on face value. They think that's who that person is. This, you know, woman thinks she knows him, thinks she knows the real him, you know, the Scott that she knows. Right, well, the Scott that he is a wife murderer, murdering a pregnant woman, and then I assume weighting her body down in the San Franscisco Bay area, her very pregnant body. All right. Oh, in my notes just before, I found the names. You know, we were having a bit of a laugh about the names. It was Pascal and Luigi, I think it was. Probably shouldn't have said it because I've lost it again. Nope. Pascal and Francoise. He made up two people. He's on the phone to Amber. Oh, I'm hanging out with my mates Pascal and Francoise. Too funny. So he's got made up friends. He's got made up stories. But the beautiful thing is that he did get caught. I mean, he did get caught. They had almost zero evidence, except one hair that was found in a pair of pliers in the boat. One of Lacey's hairs was wrapped inside the mechanism of the pliers. But that was enough evidence to put Lacey in the boat and to put, you know, Scott at the scene. All of the rest of it, you know, that's all just that circumstantial evidence or anecdotal evidence. But the thing is, you know, as an outsider, reading it, seeing it, hearing it, we all know. Like, we all know that he did it. How many tried to say that there was, he tried to say that there was a group of devil worshippers, Satanists, a satanic cult that were running wild in the area. You know, they had kidnapped Lacey. The reality is that when, you know, a woman goes missing or is, you know, found dead, you know, the police always look at the partner, because 99.9% of the time it is the partner. No one really believes Scott's story. That's the other thing. I mean, once the family, like I said, snapped out of their kind of collective delusion or illusion about Scott, once they all snapped out of that, none of them believed him. His own half-sister, Anne Bird, she's quoted as saying that she never believed his fishing alibi, saying that there's no way on Christmas Eve that Lacey would ever have allowed her husband to go off fishing when there was so much work that needed to be done. The police didn't believe him. Procaccini noted that Scott lied about things that he didn't need to lie about, which is also another narc tactic. They do this, well, there's a couple of reasons why they do it. They do it to check if you believe them or not. They're checking to see what you look like when you believe them or when you don't. And they're also doing it so when they are actually lying about something important, you can't tell the difference. So Scott was just telling lies left, right and centre to these detectives, hoping that it would keep them confused enough. The thing with narcissists, right, is they believe they are smarter than everyone. So just like Chris Watts, Scott Peterson thought that he could murder his wife, dispose of her body, and that no one would be the wiser. And if he got if he was suspected that he had covered all of his bases, he'd cleaned it all up, he'd given himself an alibi, that he thought he'd never be caught out with the affair, even when, like I said, even when his mistress is quite literally recording his messages, he's still so confident that he's got it all under control. He's not saying to her, look, I need some time alone, I've got some stuff going on. He's still going full plan, like full speed ahead, trying to organise, to catch up with her, to be with her, to start a life with her. After all, he just murdered his wife so that he could be with her. But he can't say that. He can't tell her that, Just a few more things that I noticed from this case is things like this. So 5 weeks after Lacey's disappearance, Scott sold her car and bought himself a new car. This is 5 weeks. So the bodies haven't been found yet. Allegedly she's missing, being stolen by some, Satan worshipping cult, but he's selling the car. So as I always say with narcissists, their actions speak louder than words. Watch what they are doing. Not what they're saying, but what they're doing. The other thing was 2 other women came forward saying that they'd had affairs with Scott Peterson. So even when he was saying to Amber, because his story started to change with Amber, even when he, his story was changing, when she found out there was other women involved, she realised that it wasn't because she was special, because, he'd fallen out of love with his wife and in love with her. She realised that she was one of many women. And another thing, the police on their second search warrant, on February the 18th, on their second search warrant, searching Scott and Lacey's house, they catch Scott cancelling porn channels. So he had put porn channels, he'd attached porn channels? He connected porn channels, and they literally caught him trying to unconnect or disconnect, cancelling his porn. So, oh, and one last thing also. So when the vigil was being held for Lacey and Scott didn't attend it, not only did he ring Amber, but he also organised a little drop-off of a gift. He put it under a bush near a lamp post, right? So he didn't even go to her house, but he sent her an album, Nora Jones album. The album's titled "Come Away With Me." Now she said afterwards that was really creepy. The idea that his wife's missing, that he's the accused, and he's sending her this album with all these kind of subliminal messages, this "come away with me." It just goes to show that no one has any value to a narcissist, and once once they no longer have a need for you, like obviously Scott thought he was about to make the move onto Amber. You know, he'd done the monkey branching, as in he'd, you know, tried Amber out, checked it out, seen if it could have worked. Oh yeah, this can work. So off he goes. He was going to make the move onto Amber. But instead of just letting go of Lacey, letting her live a life, he was like, no, I don't want to have her coming around with the baby, you know, interfering with me and my new life with Amber. I don't want to have to pay child support. I don't want to be, you know, a dad, whatever. You know, whatever's going on in his head. But the idea that he can just get rid of this woman and replace her just like that, that is a narcissist through and through.